men, families worked out. As soon as women didn't need men, now all of a sudden.
I find this argument really interesting for a couple of reasons, all right? My grandmother had 11 children, okay? When you have 11 children, because she had them in the 20s, the 30s, and the 40s, yeah, there was no birth control whatsoever.
Okay, this video irked my nerves with everybody in it, so I have to speak, right? Now, I agree with Miss Siditi one, right? To a certain extent, because I was very close with my grandmother, and my grandmother was actually white passing, right? And she lived a very hard life, right? And the duality of her life, hiding, pretending to be somebody she wasn't, just so that she could make sure her family lived much better than a lot of the other black families that, where they lived, makes me sick when I hear this this type of attitude from these nasty, repugnant black males nobody wants to be bothered with. Like, listen, black women didn't have a choice. Families didn't work. They were a situation of convenience. The majority of black women who were married to these nasty, stinking, you think they dirty, don't wash their ass, and got shit in their drawers now? You do not understand the level of disgust and filth and how nasty these motherfuckers were. And women had to be married to them, and have sex with them when they couldn't stand these fucking dudes, okay? Believe me when I tell you. I've heard the stories. Now, it wasn't my grandmother, and she actually loved my grandfather, even though he wasn't the greatest, right? He did what he was supposed to do, like the majority of those men, because during that time, they were the only ones that were allowed to make as much money as they did in a lot of different areas. Now, black women have always worked and always were able to make ends meet, but when it came to like black people being allowed first sojourning into areas of employment, like my grandfather was a foreman at Domino Sugar in an all-white company. He was only one of like maybe 7 black other males that worked there, right? All right, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. But my grandmother, she worked all the time. She used to be literally a telephone switchboard operator. You ever see those old black and white movies where the white women are like, phone number please, and they would usually have like M17 or whatever it is. It would be letters and numbers, and they would actually plug in the I forget what that's called. It's like a type of plug wire into the telephone keyboard and send the calls wherever it is. She used to do that for a living. And then after she finished with that career, she went on to be like they used to call them meter maids back in the days with Con Edison. She would go around reading the meters and collecting the information off the meter and putting the pay slot cards into people's mailboxes so they knew how much they owed for electricity. Anyway, get to the point. She was able to intermingle in both worlds, with the white women who didn't know she was black and with the black women who definitely knew she wasn't white. And the stories they would share at barbecues, cookouts, all kinds of family gatherings, or people just stopping by, would make, when I recall them and I remember talking about certain things with my grandmother when I became a teenager and then a young woman, it was disturbing, to say the least, about what black women had to endure. The amount of sexually transmitted diseases that a lot of these women died from due to no fault of their own. Like, a lot of people don't know that, like, back in those days, syphilis was like the #1 killer. And these males, they would sleep around with like every and anybody and anything. And the more degenerate the person, the more they wanted to have sex with them. There were stories of women not wanting to sleep with their husband because they had foul smells on their body due to having venereal diseases. In addition to the fact that they didn't wash their bodies, did not brush their teeth, and usually had residue of feces in the crack of their ass, right? So when this dude is sitting here talking about when you know, like when whatever the fuck he said, when women were married or they had to be in a family's work, no, they were living in fucking human bondage. Okay, if anybody has ever seen that old Betty Davis movie of Human Bondage, well, it was the horror version of that movie, because nobody wanted to be, most black women did not want to be with those guys. They've always been violent. They've always been sexually assaulting children and women. Think about, seriously, for all of you that see this video who are not black women, understand our reality. We went from slavery to personal bondage. Like, black women went from having to have sex with anybody, anytime they felt like it, because we were literally property of the entire world, right? We're traumatically scarred from that. And we have all types of psychological effects of slavery. Then we immediately go into another type of bondage where you are somebody's indentured servant or personal slave, like back in the days of Spartacus and stuff like that, where this person you have been given to in marriage, whose property you have now become, beats you, sexually assaults you, verbally assaults you, treats you like shit. There have been so many cases, cold cases, that they have not solved to this day, of women who went missing from that period of time. I remember stories of hearing my aunts and my cousins and my grandparents and others talk about how certain areas out west and down south, where when people lived in these houses where they had these huge crawl spaces underneath the house, in between the house, etc., or they lived in very rural areas where they didn't get a lot of company or visitors, or neighbors were so far away, they would literally kill their family members, and no one would ever know that this man killed his wife. And now he killed maybe a child of theirs that he couldn't stand, or annoyed him to the point where he beat the child to death. They did all these type of things, but because no one recorded the things the way that they do now, and when people went missing, they would usually lie and say some crazy shit like, oh, my wife left me, she ran off with another man, she left me and her children behind, she went off to whore with a man. That was not even the truth. He had killed that woman and buried her under the house in that crawl space, or in that huge ass backyard. There were even stories of men killing their wives, and I don't know if y'all know this, but pigs, because we had, one of our relatives had a pig farm. If you kill a person and throw them in the pig pen, those fucking pigs will eat that person to the fucking bone. You don't need no quick lime or none of that shit. Pigs are that fucking crazy. When you starve them enough, they will murder anything you throw in there for them to eat. Even each other. So anyway, they would do all those type of things. They were fucking despicable. So when you see black women really telling you people, for those of you who don't know anything about us, and believe me, you don't know anything about us, nothing that you've heard on television, commercials, movies, ads, definitely not hip hop or anything like that, can describe the some of the insufferable things we had to make like our normal. You have no idea the amount of suffering we have gone through. So when we don't want to be bothered with people, black males who remind us of all the trauma, all the hurt, pain, death, sorrow, and heartbreak one human being can encapsulate in one body, and we don't want shit to do with them, we wholeheartedly mean we do not want shit to do with them. Believe me when I tell you. Believe me when I tell you. Me, myself, I've only been on this earth half of a century. When I think about all the shit I had to endure with all the people in my family, the males who were sexually assaulting little girls from the time they were like 6 years old, me included. And then to have, after my dad passed away from an overdose, have some other dude my mother took up with, she wasn't home one day and this man violated me. And this is something that this man, later on we found out, was known to do. And he's not an exception. He is the rule. Like, they're all like this. And so it's just like, yo, when we're not blinded and we're these black women that see the atrocities for what they are, and we're not sitting here trying to call men that have nothing, possess nothing, don't want nothing, and hate black women kings, I'd be goddamn if I ever call one of them motherfuckers a king, because they're not. But this is what I'm trying to say to y'all, so that when these people come on here, like this dude in this video, talking about families worked, they didn't work. Women were forced to be somewhere they didn't want to be. That's the reality of shit. Believe me, if women were allowed a lot of the rights that we have right now at this moment, back then, there would hardly have been any marriages. Hardly. That's the reason why nobody wants to get married now. And then, and more of the reason why more women don't want to have children, because we don't want to be bonded or tethered to some dude we don't want shit to do with. I mean, it always ends up the same way. Like, I'm talking about black males especially. They start out okay. Some of them even might have some promise and some potential. But no matter what happens, they always fuck it up in the end. And it's like, I wasted all my time with this person, when I could have just avoided his ass to begin with, and been with somebody else, or been by myself somewhere else, and had so much more to show for my time wasted. So it just really fucking kills me when they sit here talking about black women like we're all a monolith, and we all we want to do is live to be somebody's wife or somebody's mother, or be in a relationship with one of them. When 9 times out of 10, black women who are educated, they know their black history, they come from families where their mothers and grandmothers were close, and they taught their daughters about life, and they taught their daughters about men. They don't fucking want to deal with black males. And I'm one of those type of women. I defied the teachings of my grandmother about black males. And let me tell you something. I lived to fucking regret every moment of it. And she was 100% right. But I didn't listen to her. But after that, honey, up until the day she died, if she told me, stop, don't move from that spot until I tell you, that is how I became. If she said jump, I said how high. Because, baby, it only takes me one time to learn. One time. And that's the other thing people, don't understand, is that we're not stereotypes, okay? I know the entire world goes out of their way to try to make us into this huge stereotype, but we are not, all right? And the majority of us don't come from broken homes the way y'all like to think. Whether the father is there or not there has no bearing most of the time on him being detrimental to the family or absent any fucking way. I had a father, but he was still very much absent. I had grandfathers who were very much absent in their own children's lives, but they were right there doing everything they were supposed to do, pay the bill, keep the lights on, this, that, and the other thing. But for them to be people that you could sit down and openly communicate with, feel safe to share your fears and your dreams and your vulnerability You couldn't do that shit with them. You could not do that with them. They were strangers living among us for the majority of the time, unless it came to something where they had to actually like jump in front of you and beat somebody's ass or keep you out of harm's way. That's the only time you saw any real fucking interaction of them about you or with you. You know, it was, when I tell you it's a strange fucking situation, an odd relationship, a strange relationship, it really is. Like, a lot of us don't come from the same background, even though they try to make us all out to be whatever that stereotype is, where we're all some welfare kids, all poor as fuck in a room, can't eat, and the mother is so irresponsible that she goes from man to man. That's shit. Many of us do not live like that at all. At all. But what a lot of us do live is the dysfunction of the black males in our families that we are related to, that we can't not escape from. And when I say escape, I mean that shit. It is like being in the worst case situation you could ever imagine. Like, they're just unhuman. Whatever slavery did to them broke their fucking brains, broke their souls, broke everything about them. Because they're not like black women at all. Not at all. We could take in the reality of how people fucking disrespect us, treat us like shit every day, talk us down, say we not shit, tell us we ain't shit, even try to write laws to say we ain't shit. But you know what? We still know we are much better than what anybody says or does to us. And when we decide that we are important, more important than any man, you can't do shit to us. You can't break our spirit. You can't break our soul. You can't kill our self-esteem. And the thing you definitely won't do is you will never make us any male-identified worshiping woman. We will never turn into that shit. You have to kill us first. Because that's the type of fucking will, determination, and spirit that resides in us. They don't seem to have that. They cave in at the slightest amount of fucking stress and trauma or horror of our reality. Whereas black women, we fucking soldier up. We soldier up, and we will stand in front of the devil him fucking self if we felt that our stance was right. That's just how we are. We'll pay the price, suffer, get in trouble, do whatever has to be done. Whatever has to be done, to stand for what we believe is right. I don't know. I really don't know. It's just crazy. I'm just so aggravated with people always trying to make it seem like in the black community all would be well if black women would just give in and allow black males into the home and marry them and become their personal servants and be the mother that they could fuck. We don't want to do that. We don't want you, and we don't want to do that because you are the fucking problem. Not only in our community, but in our fucking households. You are the major fucking problem. You are the problem that so many of us work so hard to get the fuck out of our lives. You are the problem. So we're always going to have this issue because we don't want you. Because you refuse to turn into a human being, and we don't want to deal with no devils. Because that's exactly what y'all are. You run around killing black women and little girls every day. Don't do that, Naya. And you don't care about what you're doing. Stop it, Naya. You don't care about what you're doing. You like hurting black women and children. And you want us to walk into a situation where people are just waiting to hurt us. Not gonna fucking happen. It's not.